Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, and we're located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, boy, oh boy, do we have some serious business to attend to. There it is. Dun, 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 dun. It's the affidavit. And we're going to go through this in very strong detail. It's not every day that you get to take a look at an affidavit that the FBI used to raid a former president's house in America. I mean, it doesn't happen all that often. And we are going to go through this, like I said, in pretty strong detail. It's 38 pages. Almost all of it is redacted. As you can see, when we start flying through this, we get some very good definitional language. So we'll save all that for a minute. But look, once we get down here to the meat and potatoes, redacted, redacted. Ugh, don't you hate that? I know I do. All right, so we're going to get into all of that and more, but let me give you the rough outline on how this is going to go down today. So, as I mentioned, we've got this partially redacted affidavit that's going to be the subject of a lot of the conversation, but we have a lot of problems that we're going to have to unpack, and I really sort of went kind of, maybe a little bit overboard on this, but I broke this affidavit down in pretty strong detail. We're going to take a look at the probable cause sort of claims that have been brought up and unpack that. We're going to analyze the U.S. code that they're referencing. You can see there are 3 sections of the law that they referenced. We're also going to take a look at a 4th. Barack Obama issued an executive order that was the pretext, was the foundation for a lot of what we saw happen at Mar-a-Lago. We'll take a look at that. And then, as you can see, we are really going to unpack the affidavit timeline. So watch what happens when I open up this node. Watch this one. Oh, gosh, look at all that. We've got some serious heavy lifting to attend to, but it's actually not that much, as you'll see. We're just going to go through the timeline and just sort of piece together what happened. Going back to May 2021, fast forwarding 1 year to May 2022, take a look at letters by Trump and his attorney, and then actually just sort of wrap it up with the end of the probable cause statement. Then we're going to see where they picked it back up this year in February with the letters to Maloney and others in Congress. And so we're going to really sort of tease out what's happening here. And then when we're done with that, once we have our bearing straight on the affidavit, as you can see, we are going to go and take a look at specifically what is missing from this affidavit or what might be wrong with the affidavit. And here we have 2 different main branches that we're going to unpack today. First, we're going to look at some defense arguments and things like exculpatory information that may have been missing from the affidavit. And when I open this node, we've got a lot more stuff to look at. So we bring back the U.S. code. We'll take a look at those. We've got questions about privilege, classification, security, and storage. We've got privacy holder rights. Who's the holder of your right to not be invaded by the FBI? Then we're going to look at some possible charges under the Presidential Records Act. And then we've got a whole section on particularity and the 4th Amendment. It's like, goodness, there's just so much to talk about. And then after we attend to all of that, we'll finally go into some reaction. Donald Trump was responding to this on True Social. So was Christina Bobb, his lawyer. John Ratcliffe, who was the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence when Trump was in office, he also came out and he had something to say about the affidavit. And we'll take a look at what some other Republicans, guys like Glenn Youngkin, have to say about the whole saga before we turn it over to the White House. Joe Biden, has sort of been hiding on vacation and, doing his little strategy. And it's kind of working for him, to be fair. We talked about that this morning during our morning walk and talk. But Joe Biden had a comment about this today, and he was sort of mocking Trump. He said, oh, what do you think, that you're president? Like, you can just declassify whatever you want? Somebody didn't tell him that, yeah, like that's one of the perks of being president. But declassify everything, the Biden jokes. And so he was out with the media talking about some of this. And he actually, I think, supports Trump's claims here. The media wants him to say something like everything Trump did was automatically, unequivocally wrong. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And Joe Biden doesn't say that. He's like, well, it's kind of complicated. Like, it sort of depends on the types of documents and where they're located and how the documents are stored. It's complicated, says Joe. So we'll talk about that. Karine Jean Pierre, oh my gosh, she struggled so bad last night. She was talking with Don Lemon on whatever he is. And you can see it right there in the face. I mean, that was not an intentional screenshot, but that's basically how this whole interview went. Like, ew, shoot, stop asking me questions, please. And so she, real sort of tough time. Don Lemon, I was trying to give her some easy answers, and she really was kind of struggling with some of that. And then we've got Nancy Pelosi, and, it's funny to watch the Democrats because they, ordinarily they're sort of like dunking on Donald Trump. Every time Donald Trump has a little bit of a slip or fall, they're sort of, gleeful and as giddy as can be. And they're all pretty mum about this. Like, nobody's doing cartwheels over this. Chuck Schumer's like, just shut your mouth. Everybody just stand by. Nancy Pelosi's like, holy crap, it's happening. Hold on your horses here. And so we've got a lot to get into, my friends. As you can see, we've got 3 whopper segments and a lot of heavy lifting to get through. It's the fun heavy lifting. I mean, it's a historic day. You don't get everyday affidavits released from presidential raids in this country. And if you want to be a part of the show, my friends, the place to do that, right there over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. They're chatting away. JC the Music Man, Jason on Blast, B-Spec. And yeah, they're chatting away. And they're kind of giving me a little grief because I sort of screwed up the post over there before the show started. Shout out to our members on YouTube. Shane Souza, D. Bowley's in the house. Cool guys here. Paul Me No, very generous. Along with Holy F, My S Stinks, all chatting away over there. And they get the Full Metal Jacket Binger GIF now. I also am a lawyer over at the R&R Law Group. It's my company, founding partner over there. And we have a mission to help good people find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their criminal cases, but beyond that in their lives. And we're very grateful for your referrals. Anytime anybody in the state of Arizona is in trouble, we have a mission to help. 480-787-0394. We offer free case evaluations, and we're extremely passionate about the work that we do. And we're grateful for your referrals. They keep us busy, and they keep us working in our zone of passion, and we're grateful for it. All right, and so as you can see, oh my gosh, we're closing up all these nodes here before we jump into the segment because there's just so much here. And I see K Bean is in the house along with Just Cows, Lean, and Playing Hooky all modding down the fort over on YouTube. Thank you, everybody over there. All right, and so now without any further ado, let's get into it. The Trump Mar-a-Lago search warrant affidavit finally revealed. Sort of. A lot of redactions, but there's still stuff that we can tease out of this, and so we are going to do that. We're going to approach this by doing a quick read of the affidavit itself. I've got that pulled up. We are going to mark it up in usual fashion. You can see it is 38 pages long, but because most of it is redacted, we're going to be able to go through it relatively quickly. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime type of document. Okay, we don't ever see affidavits signed by special agents to go and raid former presidents in this country. Of course, maybe it's going to start that we have a lot more of this now that the floodgates have been opened, but this is a historic thing, right? This is going to go in law school books all around the country. People are going to be reading about this case, just like we sort of read about Bush versus Gore, right? It's a monumental thing that's happening. And so I want to make sure we pause on that for a minute. But as you can see, it's 38 pages, and so after our quick read through, we're going to take a look at it in a little bit closer detail. We're going to look at the probable cause paragraph, okay? I clipped out the specific paragraphs, and we're going to unpack them. We're going to look at the U.S. Code provision. You can see we've got 3 sections under 18 U.S. Code, 793, 1519, 2071. We're going to look at all those. A lot of this is predicated on Barack Obama's 2009 executive order, so we'll refresh our recollection there. We'll really tease out the timeline before we get into some of the major problems with everything that is in here, everything I should say that is not in here, what is missing, and what may have been persuasive to the judge had he known about it before he signed off on the warrant that authorized the invasion. So, as I said, we're going to start with a quick read through, and as you'll see, we are going to give this some attention, but it'll happen relatively quickly. We'll be able to fly through this. You see, it is the same docket that we've been following for quite some time now on this saga, filed under seal. And this was the sort of supporting document that went under the search warrant affidavit and the search warrant inventory and the application, all of that, what was sort of requested. This was the explanation for all of that. And we never saw this up until today. A lot of fighting over this. The DOJ did not want this to become public. This is drafted by a special agent. He says, I am first duly sworn and hereby depose, I state as follows. This is our application for a warrant to search and seize, of course, Trump's residence. The government, in paragraph 1, is conducting a criminal investigation concerning the improper removal and storage of classified information in unauthorized spaces, as well as the unlawful concealment or removal of government records. The investigation began as a result of a referral the United States National Archives sent to the U.S. DOJ on February 9th, 2022. We have that in our timeline. The NARA referral stated that on January 18, 2022, this year, in accordance with the Presidential Records Act, NARA received from the office of former President Trump, hereinafter F. POTUS, via representatives, 15 boxes of records, hereinafter the 15 boxes. The 15 boxes, which had been transported from Trump's property in Mar-a-Lago, is a residence and a club known as Mar-a-Lago. And they say here that we describe in attachment A that those boxes were reported by NARA to contain, among other things, highly classified documents intermingled with other records. So NARA goes back January 18th. They have all of these conversations. NARA on the 18th got boxes, 15 of them, and there was stuff in there. And that sort of prompted the inquiry. Oh my goodness, look at these boxes. What's in here? So they sent a referral over to the DOJ earlier in the year. So the DOJ now, right, which is the prosecuting entity of the United States, they are working with the FBI. They say, all right, now FBI says, okay, after an initial review of the NARA referral, why this came over in the first place, the FBI opened a criminal investigation to, among other things, determine how the documents with classification markings and records were removed from the White House. Now, put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. Open an investigation into how. All right, so like physical boxes, like moving trucks, like people physically moving boxes out of the White House somewhere else to Mar-a-Lago, or any other authorized locations of classified materials and how they came to be stored on the premises. And I mean this like specifically, like a U-Haul came and 3 guys came out with jump chutes and boxes, and they put the boxes on the U-Haul and took them to Mar-a-Lago, took them off the U-Haul and put them in the location. Right, that's specific. They're saying to determine whether the storage locations at the premises were authorized locations for the storage of the classified info, and to determine whether any classified documents or records may have been stored in an unauthorized locations at Mar-a-Lago or other unknown locations, and whether they remain at any such locations, and to identify any persons who may have removed or retained classified information without authorization in an unauthorized space. All right, so basically, this is the FBI opening the floodgates. They say, okay, this NARA referral came over and we had to ask ourselves all of those questions. That big list of, you see every single one of these semicolons. Determine whether and, analyze this and identify. They're doing all of that as part of their investigation, which basically means like it's a full onslaught of surveillance of Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Paragraph 3, we get a little redaction here. Get ready for it. Paragraph 3 says, number 3. The FBI's investigation, now that we have to ask ourselves all of those questions, has established that documents bearing classification markings versus, markings, my presumption would be that you can have a classified document that is declassified that would still have the original classification markings on it. Now, if you can have a declassification over the classification marking, does that override the original underlying classification marking? Right, so that's the first question I would be asking. They say it bears classification markings which appear to contain NDI information, national defense information, were among the materials contained in the 15 boxes that were stored on the premises in an unauthorized location. Now, I'm going to guess that the rest of this redacted paragraph, or these couple sentences, is talking about that unauthorized location. They were stored at the premises in an unauthorized location. One witness named so-and-so, a janitor at Mar-a-Lago, he reported that when he was sweeping the floors, he saw Donald Trump break the clavicle of a Secret Service agent before he went into the closet and read the documents over a cup of tea. So they say further, there is probable cause to believe that additional documents that contain classified NDI or that are presidential records subject to record retention requirements currently remain at the premises. There is also probable cause to believe that evidence of obstruction will be found at the premises. And so we're going to unpack that in a minute. As I said, let's read through this quickly and then we'll spend another round going through this. Paragraph 4 says, I'm a special agent with the FBI assigned to Washington Field Office at so-and-so and so-and-so. During this time, I have received training at the FBI Academy located at Quantico, Virginia, specific to counterintelligence and espionage investigations, and I'm very good at what I do and so-and-so. He says, based on my training and experience, I am familiar with efforts to unlawfully collect, retain, and disseminate sensitive government information, including NDI. And this FBI agent writes, in paragraph 5, I now make this affidavit in support of an application under the rules of criminal procedure to go raid Mar-a-Lago based upon the following facts. And there is probable cause, right? We're going to spend some serious time on this one paragraph, saying there is probable cause to believe that the locations to be searched at Mar-a-Lago contain evidence, contrabands, fruits of crime, or other items illegally possessed in violation of U.S. Code, these 3 separate sections. Then we get to the source of the evidence. FBI agent writes, the facts set forth in this affidavit are based on my personal knowledge obtained during my participation in this investigation, and information obtained from the FBI and U.S. government personnel. Because this affidavit is submitted for the limited purpose of establishing probable cause in support of the application for a search warrant, it does not set forth each and every fact that I or others have learned. They talk about some statutory authority and where they get the ability to do this. First of all, they take us over to 18 U.S. Code 793E, and we'll take a look at this in a little bit more detail and context. But this is the law, right? This is the actual provision of the law that they say might be at violation here, might be at issue. Whoever having unauthorized possession or control over any document or information that has national defense information that could be used to injure the United States, and that the possessor, the person who has possession of the document, has reason to believe that could be used in that harm, shall be imprisoned for 10 years if they are in possession of those documents, right? Here's another one. Under Order 13526, this is the order that came out from Barack Obama. He published this order back in 2009. You see him here giving us this interesting face. And this is more about what the order actually says. Very briefly, President Executive Order 13526, the order prescribes a uniform system for classifying, safeguarding, and declassifying national security information, stuff related to transnational terrorism, signed by Barack Obama. The affidavit says that it gives us some rules and how things are classified, and saying that this is what prohibits unauthorized disclosure that could cause national security damage. They now give us a little bit of details, right? This is all sort of definitions. It's almost like reading a dictionary. So they're giving us this layering of authority. They say, okay, U.S. Code 793 says this, executive order that was issued by Barack Obama interprets the law accordingly, and thereby we have the following definitions. Information may be classified as following. It could be confidential. And if it is classified, if we put that document in that bucket, here's what it says, and here's how we define it. Confidential is information that if unauthorized, if it's released, it could cause serious damage. That's why it's got to be safeguarded. Secret must also be properly safeguarded. And they say unauthorized disclosure that might result in exceptionally grave damage to national security is going to be top secret, right? So all the different elements. SCI means sensitive compartmented information, classified information about the analytical process and control systems. Special intelligence, another definition in our dictionary, is an SCI control system designed to protect technical and intelligence information derived from the monitoring of foreign communication and signals and so on. And human control system, HCS, is an SCI control system designed to protect intelligence derived from clandestine human sources, commonly referred to as human intelligence. All right, and I see a lot of people hyperventilating over all of these acronyms. Oh my goodness, HCS and FISA and HUMINT and SISC, all over Twitter. These people are melting down over this stuff. And it sounds really, important. A lot of definitions on there and a lot of things. We'll have to see what's in there, won't we? Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, they give us another definition, is a dissemination control designed to protect intelligence information derived from the FISA court. Do you know that we talked a lot about the FISA court, didn't we? There was some FISA court conversation when we were talking about illegal spying on Donald Trump's campaign and some other interesting things. You certainly remember that. When they got illegal access to warrants and certain things. Now, classified information, they say, may be marked as not releasable to foreign nationals. And they give us another classification of originator controlled. This marking indicates saying that dissemination beyond pre-approved entity requires originator approval. And we get more definitions now. So they're just telling us, right? There's no new information here. You can go on the internet and just find out what all this crap means. And they say classified information of any designation may only be shared with persons determined by an appropriate U.S. government official to be eligible for access and who possess, quote, a need to know. Among other requirements, it's really nice. This is a really great book report that they've written here for us. Among other requirements, in order for a person to obtain a security clearance allowing that person access to classified U.S. government info, that person is required to and must agree to properly protect classified information by not disclosing the information to persons not entitled to receive it, by not unlawfully removing classified information from authorized storage facilities and not storing it in unauthorized locations, okay? What they're telling us is if you take a library book out of our government library, you got to store it appropriately, all right? You can't put it in someplace else, and you got to make sure that you actually keep the book cover on it. You can't take the book cover off. Don't you even think about using it as a coaster. None of these things. And so they're giving us the detailed manual about when you should return your library book and who's in charge of all this crap. What they're forgetting, right, is that Donald Trump sort of owns the library and he has the discretion to make decisions on many of these books. He says, I'm building, this is my, I built this whole library. And I have the authority to say, that's my book now. That is declassified now. That is no longer in the same category because I ran the library and I was in charge of all of those things. So they write, and they're sort of responding differently to that, right? They're responding saying, let me explain to you why that doesn't apply. If a person is not eligible to receive classified information may not be disclosed to that person. And so we're having conversations about a lot of this classified information, but a big missing component to this is what if Trump had declassified this stuff or said that this is not classified? We're going to talk about that in a minute. In order for a foreign government to receive access to classified information, the originating U.S. agency must determine that release is appropriate. Under that executive order that Barack Obama entered, this includes all sorts of computer systems and classified information storage facilities. And then we have what is called the CFRs. Okay, the CFRs are what are called Code of Federal Regulations. And so what ends up happening in the United States is we have the legislature codifies law, right? So they'll actually write the U.S. code like this. And then they'll write regulations that interpret the code. And so that's what we're looking at here. Parts 2001, 2003, they regulate the handling of the classified information. And these are the three statutes that we can take a closer look at. We'll see sort of how time goes, but here's what they're telling us. These are the three sections that made up the probable cause basis paragraph. And they've got several provisions where they talk about intent to take and carry it away and intent to unlawfully conceal, willfully, unlawfully conceals, right? We're going to come back to this intent point in a minute. But knowingly alters or conceals or covers up any tangible object with the intent to obstruct or influence the investigation. Right? All of those are very important sort of foundational pieces that they're predicating the charges upon. They give us some presidential rules, Presidential Records Act, and we're going to come back to all of this. But this is just copy and pasted directly out of the U.S. Code, right? That's all this is. So this isn't anything new. They're just giving us some jumping off points for potential avenues of criminality, which is great. But they're not giving us alternative interpretations of this, which we'll talk about in a minute. So then we get finally to the probable cause stuff. Okay, this is the meat and potatoes. This is the good parts. They just gave us a bunch of foundational stuff. Remember, oftentimes in the law, we talk about the IRAC format, IRAC. The issue, the rules, the analysis or the application of the facts to the rules, and then you get a conclusion. So we just got through a lot of the rules section. Now we're looking at the application. We want to know what is going on here and how the rules apply under the context. So finally we get to this in paragraph 24. It says, on February 9th, 2022, the special agent in charge of NARA's office of the Inspector General sent NARA the referral via email. Okay, the National Archives head librarian says, the books are not back. I want you to go get them. Sends it over to the DOJ, which is what governs the FBI. The referral that the FBI got said that according to NARA's White House Liaison Division Director, a preliminary review of the 15 boxes indicated that they contained newspapers, magazines, printed news articles, miscellaneous printouts, presidential correspondence, personal and other post-presidential records, and, quote, a lot of classified records. Parentheses. Of the most significant concern was that highly classified records were unfolded, intermixed with other records, or otherwise improperly or improperly identified. And this is coming over from NARA's White House Liaison Division Director. Don't know who that is. On February 18th, then, just a couple weeks later, actually 1 week later, the head librarian of the United States, the archivist, chief administrator for NARA, stated in a letter over to Congress, Chairwoman Honorable Carolyn Maloney, who I'm pretty sure just got her caboose thrown out of Congress, just lost to the waddler Jerry Nadler. They sent a letter over to her, and I'm pretty sure she's a Democrat who hates Donald Trump, so that's interesting. Says, quote, NARA had ongoing communications with representatives of former Trump throughout 2021. Which resulted in the transfer of 15 boxes to NARA back in January of this year, 2022. NARA has identified items marked as classified national security information within the boxes. What is it? I don't know. The letter also stated that because NARA identified classified information in the boxes, NARA staff has been in communication with the Department of Justice. So the head librarians, they get all very angry and they say, all right, well, you better just send this stuff over to the DOJ. We're very angry that this stuff has not been turned over. The letter was made public. And on February 18th, the same day, Trump got out and he posted on Truth Social, or he made this public statement here. He said the National Archives did not find anything. They were upset upon request that presidential records in an ordinary and routine process to ensure the preservation of my legacy and in accordance with the Presidential Records Act, so on and so forth. Right? So they're saying that Donald Trump is saying that I don't have anything left to give you and that I am not entitled to give you any of these documents, which we are going to talk about because I think he's right. And so do Democratic judges, one of them named Amy Berman, who went to Harvard and made a similar ruling in the D.C. Circuit case in Judicial Watch versus NARA. I think that was back in 2012. So it's before that. There's a lot to unpack here, but this is the Donald Trump statement. And they say, listen, Donald Trump posted this. And what that means to us is that he is not going to be cooperating with us anymore. He's not going to be turning any of this stuff over. He said there's nothing left. And so on and so on. He says, Russia, Russia, Russia hoax, and so on. Then we get to paragraph 26, and here it starts. The redaction fever begins. Paragraph 26, right? And this is right after, let's see if we can fill in the gaps a little bit. February 18th this year, Trump says, I'm not giving you any of these records back. You came by, you got what you needed, get out of here. Paragraph 26, redacted. Paragraph 27, redacted. Paragraph 28, redacted. 29. Then we get to paragraph 30. And so the rest, and it's a new paragraph, it's a new subject. So we don't really know sort of how they ended that. But they're talking about, I would guess that these paragraphs are sort of talking about the exhaustion of the ability to work with Trump, right? In other words, they start here and they say, on February 18th this year, we said we want access to the records. Trump responded the same day, said no. This paragraph, so we said we need them, yes. And then paragraph 27, Trump said no. And then 28, we said yes. And then 29, Trump said no. And then we had to make a decision, something like that. But then we get a whole new topic. Okay, then we fast forward and they sort of go back to the beginning. And they say, okay, this is why, we needed to jump to this unprecedented, insane act. They say boxes containing the documents were transported from the White House to Mar-a-Lago. And again, as we talked about earlier, right, there's this concept in the law called chain of custody. You have to follow something from one person to another. In a DUI case, we follow the blood sample from a person's body through the needle into the vials, into the evidence locker, from the evidence locker out to the crime lab tech, or the person who pipettes the vials, shoves it in the machine, to the person who writes the numbers down and impounds it back into evidence before it comes to court. Right? That's an entire chain of custody. Following it from A to B to C to D, follow the bouncing ball. Same thing happened here. The government is trying to make this case. They're trying to say those documents left the White House and they ended up in Trump's closet. So they start at the beginning. They say, okay, well, here we are. Beginning in January of 2021 now, they say, according to a CBS Miami article titled Moving Trucks Spotted at Mar-a-Lago, published on Monday, January 18th, 2021, at least 2 moving trucks were observed at the premises on January 18th. Now, we're talking about moving trucks. And then we get major redactions. Okay, the rest of paragraph 30, paragraph 31, 32, redacted. And then we see this big box here. Now, what could that box be? I would guess it's a photograph, right? That's probably a big photo here. And so I actually went and I found that article. Let's see if we can pull it up here. There is the article that came out from the, where did this go? Yes, here it is. CBS article. They talk about this article in particular, and then there's a video. So again, we're putting ourselves in the framework of the FBI agents, and we're trying to ask ourselves, what are they doing? What are they redacting? They just got done talking about the moving trucks, and they referenced this CBS article from January 18th. It's literally the same article. They say moving trucks were spotted on Monday at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach. At least 2 trucks with boxes of items were spotted by news helicopters being wheeled inside the estate. Boxes going into the estate. Okay, so they saw them leaving the White House and then going into Mar-a-Lago. There was a large security presence around the compound, along with at least 1 Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office helicopter flying above. Whether President Trump can make Mar-a-Lago his permanent residence is still unclear. And that is the article referenced in the affidavit, right? And we're thinking that maybe there's a photograph there of the boxes going into the Mar-a-Lago residence. And here is the actual video from that news clip that was published back in 2021.
Today, moving trucks were spotted at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. At least 2 trucks with boxes of items were being wheeled inside. There was also a large security presence at Mar-a-Lago with a USA helicopter and a sheriff's office chopper flying overhead. Whether President Trump can make Mar-a-Lago a permanent residence is still unclear. He's expected to fly to Palm Beach Wednesday, marking his last ride on Air Force One ahead of Joe Biden's inauguration. Vice President Mike Pence is expected to attend the inauguration.
Okay, so we see these boxes, right? Maybe those are the boxes. And, maybe there's National Archivists or there's FBI agents or there are actually people monitoring this. They're actually sort of cataloging this and watching these boxes, maybe right there. Are those classified markings on there? I don't know. But they are following the boxes moving around. Now, in the affidavit, you can see there's probably some photographs, right? We don't know what is right there in the affidavit, but it's presumably a photograph. And then we see that's probably more explanation. 34 redacted, 35, 6, 7, all redacted. And that was all part of the moving section that was talking about the moving boxes. But then we get the provision of the 15 boxes to NARA. Remember, a big group of those boxes came back, and we don't get any more details about that. And presumably what is happening here is they're talking about, okay, once we pick those boxes up, then we went through them. We rummaged through them, and we found X, Y, and Z, right? This is what we found. On or about May 6th, we get a little bit of meat here. 2021, NARA made a request for the missing presidential records archives, and they continued to make requests until December 2021, when, look at this, when NARA was informed that 12 boxes were ready for retrieval at the premises. Weird. So you're telling me that on May 6th, Trump said, here, have the boxes back. 2021. They come back, boxes are ready, come and pick them up. So they go and they pick them up. Now, what are they going to say? They're going to say, we went and rummaged through these boxes and here's what we found. 37 this and 57 whatever, and here's this. Footnote number 1, we also saw this, and it's a reference back to that or whatever. 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, all redacted. No information about it. And then another, maybe a photograph that we can't see. Nothing in there. Don't know what that is. So we see here, finally, we get down to page 17, and we get one full paragraph before we go into Redactionville. It says, and we're gonna really pause on this for a minute, but just think about how quickly we fast forwarded here. We're now in May 16 and May 18th for 2022, and before all of these redactions, what was the last date we left off on? May 6, 2021. Okay, so I want to just reference that. We fast forward basically a full year in just 3 pages, right? So we're on paragraph 39, and the time is May 6, 2021. Fast forward, we're on paragraph 47. New topic, but it's a full year later. Okay, May 18th now, 2022. They say FBI, and so I don't know what the hell happened there for that whole year. FBI agents conducted a preliminary review of the 15 boxes provided to NARA, I guess in 2022, and identified documents with classification markings in 14 of the 15 boxes. Okay. A preliminary triage of the documents with classification markings revealed the following numbers: 184 confidential or classified, 67 confidential, 92 secret, 25 top secret. Further, FBI agents observed markings reflecting the following compartments: HES, FISA, OCON, NORCON, SI. I mean, good Lord. And based on my training and experience, I know that documents classified at these levels typically, she says, typically contain NDI, National Defense Information. Several of the documents also contain to what appear to be Trump's notes, President Trump's handwritten notes, she says. Which sounds like a presidential record to me, right? So 48 is, again, redacted. And we get a little bit of a snippet here that looks like it's maybe an excerpt, or I'm not sure what that might be. It's not a photograph, obviously. But 49 redacted, 50 redacted, 51 redacted, and maybe this is an email. This big paragraph, don't know what that could be. We fast forward down to paragraph 52. We're now on page 19. And it says, in the second letter, which is attached, and you say, what? What the heck? Where did that come from? Well, you got to remember that we were just reading through a bunch of stuff, and what they're talking about now is Donald Trump's lawyer. So presumably, these are conversations back and forth between Trump and his lawyer or legal counsel and NARA, right? It's probably an email. It's probably some sort of a conversation. And so we are actually going to take a look at that letter in a little bit more detail. But they say in the second letter that's attached here, lawyer for Trump asked the DOJ to consider, quote, a few principles, which include counsel's claim that the president has absolute authority to declassify documents. In this letter, counsel requested, among other things, that the DOJ provide this letter to any judicial officer who is asked to rule on any motion pertaining to this investigation or on any application made in connection with any request concerning this investigation. And so they're saying, hey, look, we attached counsel's letter to this motion as he asked us to do. Trump's lawyer said, if you're going to issue a warrant or something, make sure you put this letter on here so that you have our position. They also write, this is the special agent to the FBI, says, I am aware of an article published over on Breitbart. Kash Patel, who is a former top administration official for Trump, characterized as misleading reports in other news organizations that NARA had found classified materials that POTUS provided to NARA. Patel alleged in such reports that they were misleading because POTUS had declassified the materials at issue. Paragraph 54, redacted. 55, redacted. And right, this is all presumably they're responding to that claim. They're saying that Kash Patel made this statement, paragraph 54. We communicated to counsel that that's not true. 55. Counsel responded and said the following. Here's this paragraph. So they said something like, well, we still think it is true. And we talked to our lawyers and blah, blah, blah. And 56 says, and we responded that your lawyers are idiots and we're the National Archives and we can do whatever we want. 57, 58, 59, 60. We fast forward now several months and it's June 8th. So the letters are still going back and forth, presumably. We're filling in the gaps here. Who knows? But they say the DOJ, their lawyers, now send a letter over to counsel 1 for President Trump. That's his lawyer. And they reiterated that the premises, right, reiterated, meaning they probably iterated that the first time if they reiterated it here. They say they reiterated that the premises are not authorized to store classified information, and they requested the preservation of the storage room and boxes that had been moved from the White House to the premises. They say, look, we sent you this letter, Trump. As I previously indicated to you, Mar-a-Lago does not include a secure location authorized for the storage of classified information. Right? This is a I'm angry at you email. Anytime you have to say, as I previously indicated to you, that means I think you're just a total loser. That's basically, you can just replace that with, hey, loser. Just cross that out and just type, hey, loser, right? Rather than, as I previously indicated. Hey, loser, Mar-a-Lago does not include a secure location. See, authorized for the storage of classified information. As such, it appears that since the time the classified documents so-and-so and so-and-so were removed from the secure facilities at the White House and moved to Mar-a-Lago, they have not been handled in an appropriate manner or stored in an appropriate location. Accordingly, we ask that the room at Mar-a-Lago where the documents had been stored and secured be preserved in their current condition until further notice. So it's like a preservation letter. On June 9th, lawyer responds, says, I write to acknowledge receipt of this letter. Right? I got your letter. I'm not doing any or confirming that I'm doing anything about it, but I got your letter. Paragraph 62 says something like, whatever. It said probably, and after I realized they acknowledged receipt of the letter, there were some more communications. I responded saying, will you preserve it? And they responded saying there are records or something like that. Paragraph 64, and therefore I had concerns that this might not be preserved correctly. And so I referred it over to the DOJ maybe. Paragraph 66 says there were a series of emails, maybe back and forth, speculating, filling in the gaps. So-and-so sent this over. We reviewed this document, and this document was a letter from Kim Jong-il. Nuclear codes, whatever. Paragraph 67 says, and based on all of that, we've decided in paragraph 68, the following, paragraph 69, and then therefore we get to 70. All redacted. Go! It says, there is probable cause to believe the documents containing classified NDI, National Defense Information, and presidential records remains at the premises. Why? They said, well, because our secret undercover mole at Mar-a-Lago was dancing around in Melania's closet, and they saw the nuclear codes hanging there in her shoe drawer. Paragraph 73 says Donald Trump has a manual on breaking clavicles and flying Marine One. Paragraph 75, right? The mole is still talking to the DOJ, whatever, it's all in there. So they say, all right, okay, based on all of our information here, we really know that these library books are really overdue. And based upon this investigation, I believe that the storage room, Trump's residential suite, Pine Hall, the 45 office, and other spaces within the premises are not currently authorized locations, according to me, for the storage of classified information or the NDI. Similarly, based upon this investigation, I do not believe that any spaces within the premises have been authorized for the storage of the classified information, at least since the end of Trump's term. And isn't that really nice? And furthermore, similarly, based upon this investigation, I do not believe. That's really nice. That's great. That's good. Well, you better be pretty damn sure of that, huh? Because, you're sort of opening a whole can of worms here. Don't you love that language? Similarly, I don't believe any spaces have been authorized. Holy crap. All right. 78 says, as described above, evidence of the subject offenses has been stored in multiple locations. on the premises at Mar-a-Lago. Melania's closet, the powder room, the whatever. Accordingly, this affidavit seeks authorization to search the 45 office and all storage rooms and any other rooms or locations where boxes or records may be stored within the premises as described. The premises is currently, look at this, closed to club members. So I guess that sort of undermines the exigency arguments. The argument is that like somebody's just going to go golfing and then walk in there and get into nuclear codes. It's closed to members. And it's got to be protected by what? The Secret Service, because Trump has Secret Service protection for life. They say if at the time of the search there are areas that are being occupied or rented or not otherwise used or available, the search would not include those areas. And therefore, writes the special agent, based on the foregoing facts, I submit that probable cause exists to believe that there are fruits of evidence of a crime here, and this affidavit supports probable cause. I also request that this puppy be sealed so that I can hide my nefariousness. I believe that sealing this document is necessary because the items yet to be seized are part of an ongoing investigation, and this might severely jeopardize the inquiry. Now, they also put together here search procedures for handling attorney-client privilege information. They say that these procedures are going to be executed by the following individuals: a case team, law enforcement personnel conducting the investigation, and law enforcement not participating in the investigation who are going to search the 45 office and be available to be a part of the privilege review team. Yeah, and I've got a lot of questions about all of this. So, we can put many of these questions into a category of sort of like procedural questions and issues. The first time that NARA got the boxes back, I would say, the 12 boxes, the 14 boxes, the 15 boxes, did they do the same thing? Or maybe Trump's people were doing some of this. I don't know. The case team will be responsible for searching the target premises. However, the privilege team is going to go into the 45 office. So a bifurcation of the teams. And they're going to separate the document and the data containing the attorney-client privileged info. They say, if the privilege review team determines that documents are not attorney-client privileged, then they're going to send the law enforcement personnel over there to mop it all up. If at any point law enforcement identify data that might be attorney-client privileged, they're going to kick it back to the other team. Okay, so there's two teams going to be going through it. One's a privileged team, one's a non-privileged team. If a non-privileged team sees potentially privileged material, they're going to just turn it over to the privileged team and they'll deal with it. Respectfully submitted by FBI Special Agent so-and-so. Oh man, we don't even get any handwriting, do we? Bummer. Signed off on by Bruce Reinhart, judge for the District of Florida. Signed off August 5th. Of course, the raid took place on August 8th. Now, let's break this down here in a little bit further detail because we've got a lot of questions to unpack. When we reference the timeline on this whole thing, and we talked about the U.S. code, we talked about probable cause, we have to make sure that we're within the hula hoop of each particular criminal provision. And when we look at these, right, something that I highlighted, I think in every one of these, is knowing or having reason to believe. Okay, it's called a mens rea. It's called the mental element of all of this. If you steal a candy bar, you sort of have you think about this just mechanically, not criminally, just mechanically, right? You have a mental thought, and then you have an act. I want this, I'm going to take it and not pay for it, and I'm going to have an action whereby I take it beyond the point of sale. Two things, an action and a mental state. This is kind of like a stealing of a library book or a candy bar, is what they're saying. Trump took the documents, and he's also got to have a mental component to the crime. Otherwise, it's not a full crime. Criminal law, we call it mens rea and actus reus. It's two pieces, like 1 + 1 = 2. Here, 18 U.S. Code 793C, knowing or having reason to believe. 18 U.S. Code 1519, destruction of records, with intent to impede or to obstruct. And all of this relating to the destruction of records. And 18 U.S. Code 2071. Same thing here. I don't have this one highlighted. We're going to come back to that one later. But that is the one where you see that they can be actually, well, we'll come back to that one. That's a juicy one. But those are the different elements, right? Those are the different crimes that they're talking about. And we didn't hear almost anything about Donald Trump or his internal state of mind in there, unless that was all part of what was redacted, right? And it's his property. It is his privilege. It's his right to privacy, and it's his Fourth Amendment. So when you juxtapose that with all of this, What I did in this timeline is I actually clipped out the specific paragraphs and the specific dates. And you can synthesize that entire document, the probable cause statement, into about these 7 or 8 different clips, right? What you see right here is basically the paragraphs in between the redactions. If you strip out all the redactions, this is more or less what you see. And I would just want to point out, right? We have May to December. We've got records being returned. On May 6th, NARA made a request for the missing records. NARA got 12 boxes and returned them. We fast forward May 16th through 18. They do a preliminary review. They identify there are some confidential documents in there. There's letters back and forth now. May 25th, and counsel sends a letter back, right? This is Donald Trump's defense team, and they're making the following arguments. They say as follows. Trump's defense lawyer writes on May 25th, 2022, not long ago. He's sending this letter over to Jay Bratt, Counterintelligence and Export Control. He says, I write on behalf of Donald Trump about this ongoing above reference matter, the presidential records investigation, right? This is Trump's team making defense arguments. He says, listen, US DOJ, public trust in the government is low. At such time, adherence to the rules and long-standing policies is essential. Trump is a leader of the Republican Party. The DOJ is part of the executive branch, is under the control of a president from the opposite party. It is critical, given that dynamic, that every effort is made to assure that the actions by the DOJ that may touch upon the former president and his associates do not involve politics. There have been public reports about an investigation by the DOJ into presidential records, purportedly marked, according to you, as classified, among materials that were once in the White House and unknowingly included among the boxes brought to Mar-a-Lago by the movers. It is important to emphasize that when a request was made for the documents by NARA, Trump readily and voluntarily agreed to their transfer to NARA. The communications regarding the transfer of the boxes to NARA were friendly, open, and straightforward. Trump voluntarily ordered the boxes to be provided to NARA. No legal objection was asserted about the transfer. No concerns were raised about the contents of the boxes. It was voluntary and open. Unfortunately, writes Trump's lawyer, the good faith demonstrated by Trump was not matched once the boxes arrived at NARA. Leaks followed, and once the DOJ got involved, the leaks continued. It's almost as if Trump should have never given any boxes back, because once they got them, it opened the door and they said, oh, you've got all these classified documents, which gives us the pretext to go and raid your house. Leaks about any investigation are concerning, writes the defense. But leaks about an investigation that involved the residence of a former president who is still active and on the national political scene are particularly troubling. This was back in May. Counsel writes, it's important to note a few bedrock principles here. First, number one, DOJ, a president has absolute authority to declassify documents. Under the U.S. Constitution, the president is vested with the highest level of authority when it comes to the classification and declassification of documents. Look at U.S. Constitution Article 2, Section 2. Quote, the president is the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy of the United States. His constitutionally based authority regarding the classification and declassification documents is unfettered. If you'd like to know more, take a look at Navy versus Egan, U.S. Supreme Court, 1988. That case said, quote, the president's authority to classify and control access to information bearing on national security flows primarily from this constitutional investment of power in the president and exists quite apart from any explicit congressional grant. Do you see what that says? It's saying that the classification authority comes from the Constitution, not from Congress, not from the National Archives, not from NARA or from some FBI bureaucrat who says, that's classified. It has to go in a box and put a lid on it. No, it's the president. He gets to decide. Why? It's constitutional. It's not legislative. Number two, presidential actions involving classified documents are not subject to criminal sanction. Any attempt to impose criminal liability on a president or former president that involves his actions with respect to documents marked classified would implicate grave constitutional separation of powers issues. Beyond that, the primary criminal statute that governs the unauthorized removal and retention of classified documents or material does not even apply to the president. That statute in pertinent part is as follows. Take a look at 18 U.S. Code 1924A. It says as follows. Whoever, being an officer, employee, or contractor, or consultant of the United States. Did you see the word president in there? Let's read that again a little bit more slowly to see if we can see the word president in there. It says, It says, whoever, being an officer, no. An employee, no. No, employee, no. You're kind of employee if you work for the president, not if you're the president. You're kind of the boss if you're the president. Contractor, no. Consultant, no. By virtue of his office, employment, position, or contract becomes possessed of documents or knowingly removes them can face criminal liability. They say here under U.S. Code, it says an element of this offense, which the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt, is that the accused is an officer, an employee, a contractor, or a consultant. The president is none of those things. How do you know that? Well, it says Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, Section 2, Clause 2. And it comes from a case, a 2010 case, talking about officers of the United States. Saying here, an officer of the United States can only be appointed by the president. So the president doesn't appoint himself. By and with the advice and consent of a Senate. A person who does not derive his position from one of these sources is not an officer of the United States. Thus, the statute does not apply to acts by the president. Number 3, the DOJ, you people must be insulated from political influence. According to the Inspector General of the DOJ, one of the top challenges facing the department is the public perception that the DOJ is influenced by politics. True. The report found that one important strategy that can build public trust in the DOJ is to ensure adherence to policies and procedures that protect the DOJ from political accusations. And so we request that the DOJ adhere to the longstanding policies and procedures about communications between the DOJ to prevent political influence from crossing over. That didn't work out too well, did it? And number 4, it says the DOJ must be candid with judges and present exculpatory evidence. Must present exculpatory evidence. We're going to come back to that. Longstanding DOJ policy requires that DOJ attorneys be candid in representations made to judges. You can't just make stuff up. Pursuant to those policies, we request that DOJ provide this letter to any judicial officer who was asked to rule on a motion pertaining to this investigation. And they did. They included it. Or on any application made in connection with this request. The official policy of the DOJ further requires prosecutors to present exculpatory evidence to a grand jury. Pursuant to that policy, this was not a grand jury, this was just a judge. Pursuant to that policy, we also request you give this letter to any grand jurors or any grand jurors asking for subpoenas. With best regards, M. Evan Corcoran. Signed off on, copied over to Matthew Olson. We've talked a lot about him previously. So we're going to take a look at that, exculpatory evidence. And we're also going to briefly review this concept on particularity. Because remember, Attachment A tells us more about the premises to be searched. It describes a mansion with 58 bedrooms, 33 bathrooms, and 17 acres. Includes things like 45 office, quote, all storage rooms, and quote, all other rooms or areas within the premises that are available to be used by the president and his staff in which boxes or documents could be stored, including, look at this, all structures or buildings. Does not include areas at the time of the search being occupied or rented by third parties or private suites. Property to be seized. Any physical documents with classification markings, any evidence of the knowing alteration, and we had a lot more there, any government or presidential records created between January 20th, 2017 and January 2021. Do you see the scope, the breadth of this request? That's the entire affidavit that was unsealed from the raid on Trump's residence at Mar-a-Lago. And we've gone through it in good detail. Now let's raise some questions. You can see that's basically the entirety of the document of the probable cause portion laid out right there for us. But we have some very, I think, important questions to ask, in particular about what is missing. What does the affidavit, although highly redacted, seem to be lacking? Well, we've got a couple things we can talk about. First, defense arguments of failing to provide exculpatory evidence. Remember that we've got a lot of evidence about intent that we need to prove if the government is to be successful in this case. 18 U.S. Code says intent about willfully or unlawfully doing these things. Intentions to impede or to instruct. Or 18 U.S. Code 793, having reason to believe at the time that it's been improperly taken, right? Mens rea mental states. Haven't seen any of that. In fact, we've got some pretty hard evidence that Trump said the opposite of that. And so my first question is, was that included as exculpatory information? We got a lot of the affidavit that was highly redacted, but did they say anything about Trump walking into that meeting and saying, anything that you need, you got it? Was that included? I don't know. It seems like maybe they're missing some of the intent elements. They might also be talking or missing portions about the presidential privilege argument that has been waived and battled. Don't know. It was in there, or it has been a topic of conversation, but we don't know if it was in the redacted portions of this. Did they talk about privilege outside of the teams that were going to be sorting through the materials? We don't know. All redacted. They talked a little bit about the declassification, but we only saw that essentially in the letter that was attached by Corcoran. They didn't respond to that in the affidavit, right? They didn't respond, at least in what we saw. They didn't say, this is why Trump did not classify those things. This is why these documents are not privileged. They presumed that they were all classified, and they didn't present any exculpatory evidence to make the case that would put Trump in a light most favorable to him. The U.S. government obviously secured the facility. Secret Service was all over the place. They were talking about low security and making it seem as though nothing was secure. They didn't tell us anything about privacy right holders, right? Trump, as the owner of the property, presumably, has the privacy privilege, and he's protected by the Fourth Amendment. So they didn't really get any particular details about Trump or any of his statements. And so we can't see much of really anything that came out of this. And I've got a lot of open questions. These are all areas that I would jump off on in questioning the case. Now, the big one that really stands out is this exculpatory information from this companion case. This is the Clinton sock drawer case. Judge Amy Berman issued a ruling in this case. Remember that Clinton retained documents in the form of audio recordings after he left the Oval Office. And when he was sued by Judicial Watch, when they sued NARA, the judge came out and said the following: would there not be a high level of deference accorded to the president's decision about which records are personal? In other words, can't the president make the decision about what records are to be retained and what are personal presidential records? She says yes. She also said the court has serious doubts about whether the former president's retention of the audio tapes as a personal matter is even subject to judicial review in the first place, right? How can a Florida District Court magistrate judge make a decision that overrides and usurps Trump's decision on presidential records if his decision also usurps NARA's, according to Amy Berman? It's not possible. It's ridiculous. Similarly, I want to talk before we get to the reaction. I know I'm going long on this, but there's just so much to say. The particularity conversation is just as problematic. In the affidavit, we saw them explain what they wanted to search with a gigantic scope. Here's what they said. Any government or presidential records created between January 20th, 2017 and January 20th, 2021, they want access to. Well, there's a problem with this. In the United States, we have something called particularity, and it's very important. It's very relevant to the Fourth Amendment. And I want to share this law review journal with you. Let me cue this up so that I can open it up with our red pen here, and we can really get into some details on this. But this is just a short article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. There's a reason why I like to look at law review articles because law review articles give us a nice sort of quick summation about how some of the mechanics work on Fourth Amendment law. They just sort of detail this for us relatively quickly. And so particularity, when it comes to the Fourth Amendment, can be explained pretty simple. It says here, this is a law review article. It says, wrong but reasonable. The Fourth Amendment particularity requirement after United States versus Leon. Here's a quick explanation of how this all works. It says the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution requires that warrants describe with particularity, specifics, the places to be searched and the things to be seized. Footnote 1. Where does that come from? Here it is specifically. Fourth Amendment, it says, quote, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Writes, the insertion of this clause into the Constitution came out of the Revolutionary War. They were very angry and had a lot of antipathy toward highly intrusive general searches. The particularity clause guaranteed that government agents could no longer rely on indiscriminate or overbroad warrants to engage in general, exploratory, or rummaging in a person's belongings, which is exactly what they did with that request here. Any government or presidential records over the last 4 years. Zero particularity. It's a general, broad search, extremely, I'd say, outside the scope of anything that's reasonable. And the affidavit doesn't change that argument. So the Trump warrant affidavit is completely unsealed at this moment. We have a lot of questions. I've got a lot of issues with their claim that this was all legitimate and justified. But the downside that we have is we can't see what's in the full affidavit. And at this point, it's probably not anything that we're going to see until this case develops a little bit more. And if and when they decide to charge him, only then will it very likely be released in full. Lots of reaction to all of this. And so we're going to go over to Donald Trump. Trump responds to the redacted unsealing of the Mar-a-Lago affidavit. We've got two bits that we want to take a look at. First, on True Social, he posted this. Trump said, affidavit heavily redacted. 3 exclamation points. Says nothing mentioned on nuclear, a total public relations subterfuge by the FBI and the DOJ, or our close working relationship regarding document turnover. We gave them much. Judge Bruce Reinhart should never have allowed the break-in of my home. He recused himself 2 months ago from one of my cases based on his animosity and hatred of your favorite president, me. What changed? Why hasn't he recused himself on this case? Says Obama must be very proud of him now. So Trump said that on True Social. Let's see if he had anything else to say. He did. He says they missed a page. There it is. Yeah, from the docket, page 39 of 38. He says, make America great again. From Donald Trump. Trump also says, witch hunt. And he's right on all 3 accounts. Donald Trump responding with a slam dunk, as usual. And we also have a little bit of a clip from him where he was on Rumble or on somebody's show. Let's see what he says here. I think it maybe is the Lou Dobbs show. Donald Trump is on the Lou Dobbs show where he's reacting to the affidavit being unsealed. Here's what he had to say.
I did nothing wrong. And it's the exact same thing here. We were essentially attacked. We were broken into. They opened up safes. They brought safe crackers in. They brought many, many FBI agents in, all right before the midterms. And all when I have the best poll numbers I've ever had. This is a political attack on our country, and it's a disgrace. And the people understand it. The people understand it. And they could have come in and they could have talked to us and they could have taken whatever they needed. But instead they raided it. They took my passports. They took things that they should have never taken with that are privileged. And it's a disgrace to our country. It really is. It's just, and it just never ends. It's the same people the same leaks, the same, they leak to the same places, the same people doing the leaking. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. Our country's a wreck.
Our country's a wreck. Donald Trump is not incorrect about that. First time that we've ever had a former president have his home raided by FBI officials, and the redacted warrant doesn't give any new details that makes America feel good that this was all done legitimately. We also have a reaction from Trump and his lawyer. Let's pull this one up. Trump's lawyer, Christina Bobb, also reacts to the unredacted or the redacted affidavit being unsealed. Here's what she had to say.
We heard this whole story about, espionage, or, there were nuclear documents. He kept the nuclear codes or some kind of crazy activity like that. And yet we see the affidavit and it's a big wah-wah. There's nothing there. So I think the FBI and the Department of Justice have a lot of explaining to do. And I'm curious on the redacted portions of the affidavit, did they lie to the court? They have a history of lying to the court. We know they have lied to FISA courts in the past. So, what did they tell the judge? Because there doesn't seem to be a good reason to find probable cause and allow for the warrant. So what did they tell the judge that we don't know? And I suspect they were probably either dishonest or withheld information that could have changed the judge's mind.
Exactly right. There's a lot of exculpatory evidence questions that we have about this entire saga, wondering if they made the entire story known to the judge before the judge ultimately signed off on the warrant. Christina Bobb saying that maybe there's a lot more to that story. We also have John Ratcliffe. John Ratcliffe is the former director of national intelligence. John Ratcliffe, who served in the Trump administration, is also coming out and calling this entire affidavit that has been released sort of a big nothing burger. Here's what he said.
A short time ago, the affidavit in the Mar-a-Lago search was partially unsealed in a Florida court. What's your assessment of the document?
Well, as expected, it was heavily redacted in places. I think it provided a general recitation of the fact that the FBI and the Department of Justice believed that there were classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. But I didn't really see anything in the affidavit that justified what still seems like an extreme approach by the FBI and the Department of Justice to retrieve those documents if, in fact, they were classified.
So what you haven't seen, a lot of it's redacted, but what you didn't see here was sort of what was that catalyst or this sense of urgency to take that unprecedented step to search a former president's private residence?
Right. I mean, I think there's nothing in there that is really going to tamp down the tensions that are running so high in this country with the American people about whether or not this was justified. I think one of the unfortunate things about the FBI and the Department of Justice approach here, Catherine, is, if you set out to deepen divisions between, Americans and to increase a level of skepticism or distrust of the FBI and the Department of Justice, then they succeeded in going in, with a raid of the former president based on ambiguous statutes that have been unevenly applied in the past or never interpreted at all before to a former president who was clearly entitled to have classified intelligence as the president. So, I think that, unfortunately, the unsealing of this today isn't going to do much to, again, tamp down the chaos, the confusion, and frankly, the unfortunate things that are happening that have led to a majority of Americans, based on recent polling, to have a distrust of the FBI and the Department of Justice. And when I say that, I mean not Republicans or Democrats, but even independents. Yeah,
it does very little to calm any nerves because Americans are looking at the affidavit and we have very little answers. I mean, we basically, it seems as though it really is overdue library books, right? There's some confidential stuff in there. They've got some different speculations. I hear a lot of people hemming and hawing about what it could be, right? It could be top secret security, this, that, and the other. And we can play that game all day. I mean, we can play that game. I could say, well, it could be Crossfire Hurricane documents. It could be documents that show that the FBI is one of the most corrupt institutions we've ever had in this country. It could be all sorts of things. It could be Hunter Biden documents that show that he was, engaged with, who knows what it is. We can play that game all day long if you want to. But Glenn Youngkin is somebody who is sort of, his name is kind of in the running as a contender for the GOP in 2024, sort of the moderate wing, if Trump doesn't run. And he's out here saying, everybody, hold your horses. We've got to listen and wait and learn a little bit more until we jump to conclusions. Here's Glenn Youngkin.
Transparency is the key here. And my criticism of Attorney General Garland has been lack of transparency and what really is a clear politicization of the Attorney General's office, and whether to investigate parents in Loudoun County or not to, in fact, enforce code and keep our justices safe in Virginia. And so transparency is the key. I know there's a lot more to come here. And so I would just caution folks to not draw too many conclusions from today's release and yet continue to ask for more transparency. That's going to be the key here.
Says there's a lot more to come here. And we ask ourselves what that means. Does that mean an indictment? We've been speculating that, yeah, there really is nowhere to go from here. There's only one direction and there is no off ramp. And the Biden White House has made sure of that. Meanwhile, we've got reaction from the White House. Joe Biden and the White House continuing to deny their involvement in the Trump Mar-a-Lago raid. Very interesting, since they run the Department of Justice. And Attorney General Merrick Garland confirmed that he approved the warrant and the raid personally. We've got Joe Biden now. He's back from his vacation. He came out yesterday and sort of wrecked the economy with cancellation of student loans. And now he had a little conversation with the media, and Fox News has a clip for us. So we're going to cue this one up. Biden is mocking Trump, saying that he doesn't have the power to declassify everything. Who does he think he is? He's just some magical little fairy who can just wave a wand and it all just gets declassified. Here is Joe Biden.
He says that he declassified all these documents. Could he have just declassified them all?
Well, I just want to know I've declassified everything in the world. I'm president. I can do it all. Come on. Declassified everything. I'm not going to comment on it because I don't know the detail. I don't even want to know. I'll let the Justice Department take that.
It depends questions there. He says it depends on the documents. It depends on the security. It depends on a lot of things. So the media wants a hard answer out of him. Just yes or no. Do you want this secured or not secured? How bad is Trump really, Mr. President? He says, well, it's kind of a complicated issue. I've got my documents. I'm going to lock them up and so on and so forth.
What do you mean by semi-fascism, sir?
In December, you will...
You know what I mean.
Mr. President.
All right, so Joe Biden really trying to get his bearings straight and figure out where he is. Meanwhile, Karine Jean-Pierre over at the White House has a real difficult time having a conversation with Don Lemon over at CNN. And she gets asked some pretty hard questions about what to do about this White House sort of involvement in the DOJ raid of Trump. Let's listen.
I've got to ask you about this because as we're sitting here waiting for this, the affidavit redacted.
It's come out now.
Biden's has been
that we saw recently that you all have reported on. We have been very clear on this.
Have you?
The president was not briefed.
Okay.
No one at the White House was briefed. We are not briefed on investigation. Remember what the president has said during the campaign, and he has said as president, he wanted to make sure that we restore the independence of the Department of Justice. He has been clear about that, especially when it comes to investigations. We do not comment, we do not interfere, and we do not get briefed. So when it comes to the investigation itself, we're just not going to comment.
Are you saying that he didn't know about the actual, that there would be a search warrant carried out? Because he did have to know about it,
to sign and waive the executive privilege.
Because he had to sign off on the giving the archive.
Again, two different things, right?
Okay,
we did not. No, we did not know.
Giving the archives, the authority.
No.
What is that noise?
I just want to make sure we separate the two, right? When it comes to the actual the search, right. When it comes to the comments that
what?
the Attorney General made recently, I believe it was last week. We did not know about that. We learned about that from your reporting. Now, the letter, that's something totally different. What we did is we deferred to the Department of Justice. I'm going to leave the letter to let the letter speak for itself. That is the National Archivist. They've made that decision with the Department of Justice. Again, we deferred that to the...
You can't do that. You can't just defer stuff out to other agencies when you run that agency and when it's an investigation into your political enemies. That's not appropriate, right? You don't get to just suddenly decide that we are independent as the prosecution is continuing. For some reason, that clip is playing weird, so we'll just go ahead and move on. Nancy Pelosi, who usually is very eager to jump on Donald Trump and to make him sort of pay for, I guess, being the president at one point, she typically likes to get out there and just dunk on this stuff, and she didn't do that today. She says kind of hold your horses. We've got a little bit of, pump the brakes a little bit. Don't get too excited. Here's what Nancy says.
The fact that the president would have these documents really needs attention. So again, we won't see what's all in the affidavit because again, there are protections there. But it is important for us to know at some point how at risk our national security was. The fact that
all right. And so that's Nancy Pelosi, along with Joe Biden and others, all responding to the Mar-a-Lago raid. And it seems like they're all trying to hide behind this idea that they had no idea what was going on. We all know that to not be true. We all know that they wanted this. They've been prepping this for years, and they are about as giddy as they can be. You can see how giddy Joe Biden looks. He's very excited about the potential indictment of Donald Trump, which is probably coming right around the pike. And so that, my friends, is it for the segments on the program today. And now it is time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about all of this and more. We had some amazing super chats come in, and I want to make sure we hit those quickly before we jump into the locals comments. Mark Owens, been a member for 6 months. My goodness, Mark Owens, it's good to have you here. I'm glad you're here with us. And Marion Holtzman, with a big super chat, says over and over again, it is just BS, from Marion. Thank you, Marion. Very generous of you today. It does, right? It sort of feels like we're on this merry-go-round of BS. It does get tiring, but, you know, sometimes you got to go through it before things get better. I'm grateful that you are here. Troy Rupp is in the house. Hey, that came in from Molly Dolly. Says, have you seen Nate the lawyer's video about the raid and Viva's and Barnes' response? He said, classified or not, Trump couldn't just take any government document home. Does he know what Trump had? Why did the government tell Trump to get a better lock? Well, I mean, look, if Trump, look, I think that there's probably two ways to split that. I think that if Trump wants to take a document home and he has the authority to do it, he can do it. End of story. Now, I think most presidents probably don't, right? They probably follow the rules and follow sort of like the structure that's been created. But my response to that is if Trump has the power to do something or it's vested in him, as the Constitution says, or as, you know, the argument goes, that power is usurped by some bureaucrat that has the ability to just pass a regulation. Oh, you can't do that unless you sign this form. It's like if you have a bank account with money in it, but you have to ask somebody if you can get access to your money, who really controls that bank account? Where does that power really lie? With the person who can deny you access to your bank account, right? It's the same concept in my mind here. Troy Rupp is here with the super chat. Thank you, Troy. We had Zulu is in the house. He says, do you think that there is a chance that POTUS Biden will benevolently pardon Trump for his crimes as an act of mercy and unity? Zulu, I've heard about this concept before, and I don't think so. No, I don't think so at all. Now, it would be an interesting thing, wouldn't it? He did preach unity. He did say that he wanted to bring the country together. But I don't think so. I think he'd anger his entire base. I mean, half of the Democratic Party wakes up every morning trying to prosecute Trump. I mean, what would happen to Tishy James, Zulu? You'd break her heart. And the guy, Dan Goldman, who just ran in New York, and the AGs out of Georgia. I mean, all these people, like their entire lives are about prosecuting Trump. Joe Biden would break their hearts, so it would never happen. Linda's here. Linda Weinberger, super chat. Thank you, Linda. Very generous of you. I appreciate that. Walker Voss is here. Says 100% of the affidavit could be redacted. Yet we understand there is 100% chance this was a general warrant, and those are 100% unconstitutional. What am I missing? How is this a thing? It's because they don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about warrants. They don't care about anything. They don't care about student loans. They don't care about CDC rules. They don't care about your bodily autonomy. They don't care. It's good to see you, Walker. The Real Junior Bond is here. Says, is the law enforcement's use of "we cannot comment on ongoing investigation" protected by any constitutional right? No. If not, what laws allow the police to monitor themselves? Well, we sort of regulate them. You know, we as people pass laws and we elect representatives to pass laws for us, more specifically. And they do, right? They pass all the oversight rules and the different committees, you know, they govern themselves. It's insane. A lot of the time. Like we just had something in Arizona. I mean, it really is crazy. Like I joke here that they investigate themselves and they find they did nothing wrong. Happens all the time. FBI investigates themselves. They get charged with a crime. They run the jurisdiction in DC. So they can do whatever they want. It's free reign. Jeff Pearson says, the problem with the Biden administration is that many are intellectually and emotionally stunted. The admin is a page out of the Lord of the Flies. They do feel like they're a little bit too Twitter-brained, right? They're sort of always on Twitter. Like Ron Klain is just retweeting people all day long. C. Reed says, I'd like to make a request for a weekly meme channel in locals so you can pick your favorites each week, please. It's a good idea. I like that, C. Reed. We got some good memes. I think we've got some good memes queued up for the comments today. And let's see what we've got. We'll queue some of these up here. Yeah, we've got a couple good ones coming in. We had Jeff Pearson says, the White House is rumored to be in chaos, control freaks, paranoia, extreme levels of micromanagement. That would explain a lot. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, they move very slowly and they are sort of neurotic. Adam M says, defund the FBI. We can only hope, my friend. Molly Dolly's here. Oh, we already got that one. Molly Dolly. Yeah, I think that, look. And if Trump declares that it's not a classified document, it's presidential records, and there's a basis for that, well, case law has established precedent that sort of defers to him. Aber says, do you think Trump will come out on top of this case, or is there a possibility that he could be proven guilty? Oh, yeah, there's a great possibility he can be proven guilty. If he's indicted, he's probably going to be found guilty, right? They would indict him for a national security law out of the D.C. Circuit Court. Yeah, so if he gets indicted, he'll be found guilty. There will be jurors there who are literally drooling over themselves to get on the case. It will be no different than Bannon. K. Bean says, I nominate George Klaus for honorary membership in memory of his glorious gavel. Of course, yeah. Do you see that puppy? Look at that thing. It's beautiful. It's going to follow me everywhere. Thank you, George. It's a beautiful gavel. And yeah, George, I mean, I don't know how to, I can't do it on on YouTube, but I can do it on locals. So George, yeah, George, come join us, George. Where you been? Diamond Guns, send me an email, send me a DM, send me something. Diamond Gun says the noise could be feedback coming from your mics being too close to a mixer or other equipment, etc. P.S. Big coxswain. All right, well, thank you for that. Maybe it is. My mixer is pretty close. It's right here, but it was only happening when I was playing the videos. Like, why would that be? It's always a complicated thing, man. This is all complicated business. But thank you, Diamond Gun, Big Coxswain, for the assistance on that one. We're jumping over to locals to see what the local crew has, and we've got a lot of comments, so we're going to go quickly today. We got a lot of them because I posted this earlier. So we're going to fly through it, my friend, so don't get too angry. We've got 3 pages of these. We're going to go quickly. So some of the longer ones might get skipped. We'll see. We got 4 pages. We're going to keep going. We're going to go quick, fast. All right. Let's go to, I'm queuing them up here. Here's another one. MSW20 is in the house. He says, Rob, I can't listen live. I'm bummed. But here's the formal version of the redacted affidavit. Here you go. FBI warrant there on top. That's the official logo right there. And then you've got location, Mar-a-Lago. Bad man hideout is up here. Orange man bad, signed Merrick Garland. Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's about what we read here today. Oh, it's pretty great. Okay, so that came in from MSW20. Viantica says, Rob, look at all those redactions. Totally seems on the up and up. Thunder says, I just heard they released it. We'll be here tonight. Good to see you. Here's another one. The one released from the GOP was better. Never going to give you up. Never going to let you down. Never going to turn around and hurt you. We have Heather says, oddly, you know, it isn't as redacted as I thought it was going to be. Still redacted, but was expecting more. Youngest girlie says, hi, and she wants a shout out. Shout out to the youngest girlie. Happy Friday. Hope your school day was good today and the school week was amazing. Glad that you're here with us, youngest girlie, and everybody at the Three Girlies household. Mike Dell says, from what I can tell, the affidavit is vague and a real judge would never approve it. Since Trump moved it down there when he was president, he could have declassified everything and they have to prove he didn't. This is to take the spotlight off the corrupted buffoon, Brandon. Good to see you, Mike. We have this one from Jason. He says, this is BS. It's what I expected. They are going after him on whatever technicalities they think they can manipulate to foobar the law to reach their ultimate goal of sabotaging Trump and ridding him from the planet. That's their desire. We should take them at our word and treat them like the enemies of freedom. They are outlaw criminal organizations, and we should have political repercussions for them. Thank you, Jason. We had another one from Three Girlies says, I just read the whole thing. You know that they were supposed to be judicious in what they were looking for, so that if it was attorney-client privilege that they wouldn't take it at the time of the search, not take everything and decide on it later through a filter team. Now we know they didn't even follow what their search procedures were supposed to be. This is ridiculous. This is the reason why they thought it was appropriate, is because they have 2 moving trucks come in. Because they noticed that 2 moving trucks, they felt like they were moving boxes and they needed to go get them. And Kash Patel is wrapped up in it too. Even with the redactions, this looks like what we all thought all along. I'm beyond angry over this. The affidavit is clear that they went on a searching expedition for anything and everything that they could get. They were not narrow in their search by any stretch of the imagination. I wanted to give them some sort of benefit of the doubt as being a fair-minded individual, but anybody reading what's in here will see what a farce this is. Good comment from Three Girlies over on Locals. And let's see what else we've got. We're going to do a refresh on this page before we jump into the additional comments. Here is another one from Happy Old Cat Lady says, my first read, he was obviously set up. They knew exactly what he kept. They didn't ask to review them, and they knew when they were there, nor does it appear they asked to remove the documents in question. The search wasn't limited to just the documents marked as potentially suspicious, nor request was made for documentation that Trump had declassified and the records he kept. Honestly, Trump could have written declassified on every document, or did he? Nor did I see any documentation that they requested the documents back to being reviewed. It's like filing a lawsuit against your neighbor for not returning a tool when you never asked for it back when it was in plain sight. Good comment, Bonnie. C. Reed says, just tell them their redactions are intended to fight against racism. Yeah, and then the redactions will be good. Or global warming or COVID. You know, these are COVID redactions. They're good for you. Take them and eat them. All right, we have another one here from, let's see. This one is from Jay Witt. He says, the affidavit shows what I suspected all along, a fishing expedition prompted by J6 mobs. They probably retrieved classified documents. They spent 10 hours there. Parameters were not narrow. They vacuumed up everything they could. Don't be surprised if something totally unrelated and classified material is released by the DOJ in a charging document. Good comment, Jay Witt. Miguel Labra says he's going to be here after work. Definitely national security to have this clown in office, talking about Biden. Here was another comment coming in from Heather, says, I think this is a dereliction of duty from this judge. Reinhardt said that during a hearing that he relied on the information in the affidavit and nothing else when he decided to approve the warrant. So he did not check the veracity of anything in that document before he signed off on it? Maybe not. It sounds like he didn't investigate any of the confidentiality issues or anything. He just said, okay, sounds good. Viantica says the best way to hope you're feeling better. V says the best way to control people is to not only control the narrative, but also the counter narrative. Says this is from 2019, talking about an occult link over on Locals. PMAMD says this saga is amazing. It is all based on nothing. The nothingness started with Hillary and the top secret emails. The Dems say nothing here. Then 6 years of Trump crimes when he did nothing. Coming around full circle, Biden full of crimes and doing nothing presidential. Trump boxes full of nothing. The explosion of people involved in the entire hoax. Since Hillary says enough is enough. Peace. Good to see you. C. Reed says, I don't normally share videos, but this is a much watch. Okay, you all have to watch it over there. Troll Master says, I tried to look over that thing, but I just kept getting overwhelming sensation to donate to Black Lives Matter. Thank God we got Robert to tell us what it says. Good to see you, Troll. Yeah, a lot of donations to BLM coming today. It's Jake from Oxford. He says, I guess since it's Friday, we just show up for work whenever we want. Also, quick shout out to the youngest girly. Oh, great. Oh, great. From Jake Sullivan. Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. What have we done? Wolfgang, wow, it's been a long while. I'm glad you're finally back. Rob, I'm the reason a once grouchy old cat lady is now happy. No adult puns in there. I'm just that great of a person. Says maybe we should remind Kenny Cole of the YouTube policies. He should not even bring up the midterms, elections, Republicans, or voting, period. Anyway, sorry, Rob, had to get those shout outs out of the way. Back to my show. Says, I watched this week as the community spoke out wanting a Binger gif and how you made it happen. Says Binger is the greatest, most honorable prosecutor of all time, so I approve of this. But where is my GIF? Since this is my show, I allowed you peasants all week to figure this out. Now I will make you one over the weekend for you all to use. So we've got Jake Sullivan. Jake Sullivan is here, shouting out to the youngest girly. Jake Sullivan, he's probably a nice guy. Shout outs to the youngest girly. Heather says, this one is longer, 9 minutes. Definitely more detailed. Turley is a Democrat, and he agrees with Dershowitz most of the time. Both have argued on behalf of Trump. Sharing another link over there. Here's one from Three Girlies. Says Dershowitz's argument is very interesting. Says the video is short. It's not that short. Happy Old Cat Lady says, it's obvious it's going to a grand jury. Why don't we hear anything about it? Well, because they don't. We will once it gets indicted. Here's another one from Kenny Cole. He says, let's get this straight. This is an attempt to influence the midterms. Exactly the excuse as to why Hunter Biden couldn't be discussed. Says FBI agents, patriots in the House, expose the elements. Says October is going to be interesting with the Danchenko trial. Sussman trial was in the can. If we don't stop these people now, it's going to be more difficult later. Libs have been the worst purveyors of misinformation in history, saying there's a ton of money to be made. Parallel economies are necessary. He says, I'm rambling a little bit, but the raid on the president combined with Facebook Zuckerberg's pushing censorship is the line in the sand. Says there will be says he's angry, but he wants a completely parallel economy, which I don't disagree with. I think it's absolutely necessary. In fact, I think that we're building it in real time. Media is building a separate parallel economy in real time. And many of you, my friends, are a part of it, and I'm grateful for it. Former LEO says there should be no federal trials with potential political ramifications occurring in D.C. All that is needed is a transcript of the Sussman joke trial to be submitted for a change of venue. The search warrant was executed in the Southern District of Florida. They're all alleging that crimes occurred previously. I could live with the trial in Florida, much like Sussman Part 2. Jason says, I think Rob had a busy day. Zach Nichols said, so let me get this straight. Trump is pretty much allowing the FBI to walk through his property. Look around is the main reason that they had evidence to pursue a search warrant in the first place. I'm all for not making things harder on law enforcement, but a situation like this is going to make me think twice about those who come to my home that I do not personally know. However, I will now more than ever remind myself of the actions. Good to see you, Zach. Jason on Blast says the feds better not Gavin McGinnis, poor Rob over there, just for telling us the truth. Crazy times. Yeah, Gavin McGinnis was just sitting there hosting his show, and the feds came into his property, and they're like, you're coming with us. And his show just sat there live streaming for like an hour before they booted him out. Here, Happy Old Cat Lady sent this one. Trump sent this one over. So good. Make America Great Again, page 39 of 38. Thank you for that, Happy Old Cat Lady. Tricky says, does anyone check the originally filed affidavit with the one released on an ongoing basis? I don't trust these snakes. Well, I got our copy just from the court docket. So, I would guess they would match. Here, this one came out from Me It. Says, so some CBS and other news sources got some boring footage of box moving on a van, and that made the FBI go do the raid. I think something fishy is going on. And what was redacted? I found plenty of links just searching it online. A 7-year-old could find it. Anyway, there better be a real issue here because I don't even care about Trump or the fake persecutions. Last time I exposed myself to CNN, commenters were still saying post-raid. I was like, what year? Is this 2016? I think you're saying that like you're kind of tired of all these stories, which, yeah, they've been going on for a long time. Jeff Rook says, Rob, I missed Wednesday's stream, but I watched the loan forgiveness segment today. Can't get over. We've reviewed this for a year and a half and determined we have this authority. Gives me the same vibe as a guilty verdict in search of a crime. Luckily, we'd never have to worry about such self-serving moves by our current executives. Surely they'd never insert unprecedented action here. It's a good comment, Jeff. Yeah, they do the same format for all sorts of different issues. Constitution's not really that relevant anymore. Robute says, remember, guys, the FBI is an American Gestapo. Garland is Heinrich Mueller. And the redactions of the Trump affidavits reinforces this. Reinhart is not a good judge. And he says, give the Hunter mean with the redacted document to Paul Gosar and other populist politicians. That came in from Robute. Rumble rant came in. Thank you, Vientikis. And thank you, my Rumble friends. I got so many screens open. Sometimes I miss them. And I did miss this one. Sedona rocks. Thank you, V, for sharing this one. He says, the way Kash Patel describes the declassifying procedure for the president, it's simply just saying, I hereby declassify these documents over piles. I thought the same thing about the stamp. Well, I mean, honestly, I don't know that is inaccurate. It's like you have to give an order to do something, right? At some point. And so at some point, it's like, yeah, you could stand over, you could just say to somebody in the Oval Office, I want those declassified. And they're done. It's done, right? It's like, yeah, it's done, right? That's the president. You have to give an order. So I kind of think he can do that to some degree, right? And then they might say, okay, well, we're going to do that for you. We got to go through all these formats and procedures and stuff. But it's like, what does a president do when he says, yes, drop the bomb? Yes, go. Yes, I give you the authority to do that. He's saying something. So he says, yeah, those are declassified. That's the order. Right? Here we have another one from It's Jake. He says, Rob, look, I guess since it's Friday, we just show up for work whenever we want. Gosh. Also, shout out to the youngest girlie. Wolfgang, wow. Wait, we already got this one. We already read that one. Robute says, remember, guys. Robute says, don't ever let law enforcement inside your house without a warrant because what happened to Trump will happen to you. Good advice. You say, no, not without a warrant if they try to come in. Can I come in? No, not without a warrant. They say, oh, darn it. Off-topic legal question. Well, I may give you an off-topic answer. Let's see. As I understand it, the majority of legal action against this has been brought through lawsuits. The takings clause forcing the government to prove guilt. What? V. Yeah. So yes, civil asset forfeiture. Yeah. Yes, it's a very, very corrupt, disgusting thing that happens. It's complicated and I can't get into it right now, unfortunately, because it's off topic. Thank you, V, for the comment. We're doing a quick refresh. Let's see what else came in. Here is Thunder7 says, their end goal is to indict Trump. Doesn't matter what for, whether it's legal, it's not, just like the warrant. They want that headline before the midterms and they're going to get it. They know they're going to go down in flames and they're willing to drag the justice system in to get them. Reinhart was their weasel card and Garland their demon card to get it done. Three girlies and happy old cat lady says, is redaction fever a Trump derangement syndrome? Yeah, it's probably like, like insurrectophrenia. You know, when you have the constant fear of insurrection, it keeps you up at night. You get redaction fever, and then you have to call your doctor for Trump derangement syndrome. It's a very complicated series of tragic outcomes. And I think that's it. Oh, we have this one from Thunder7. He says, now that Russia collusion is a proven lie, when do the trials for treason begin? Well, I don't know. Don't hold your breath on that one, Thunder 7, because the current state of affairs aren't looking good. Let's see here. We had a couple others come in from Gregory Sloan with his nice super chat. Well, thank you, Gregory, for that. No question on that one. Happy Dippy Cali Girl. Oh, Hippy Dippy Cali Girl is here. Hippy Dippy is here. Says, Robert, will these idiots get an indictment? If so, on what? And appeals? Yeah, these idiots will certainly get an indictment. I think that they will. I think that they're actually going to indict him. Like, I don't know what else this is for, but for an indictment. What else are they going to do? Like, you know, it's like telling all of your kids that you're going to Disneyland and then saying, like, the morning of the trip, just kidding, we're not going. Could you imagine that for the Democrats? They've been going hog wild, just going crazy, thinking that this is going to be the end of Donaldo, and they're just not, I just don't think that they're going to allow it to go by the wayside. And I'm doing there's 4 pages now. I have a whole nother set of comments. Hang on a second. Oh, yeah, there's 4 pages. V says you got a whole nother page of comments. I forgot. Hold on a minute. Yeah, we've got a whole nother page. Okay, so we're not getting out of here. I knew that there was a lot. Heather is here. Says, conspiracy theory, NDI could be Crossfire Hurricane. Yes, exactly. It could. After all, it would be so damaging to the FBI, the DOJ, permanent bureaucracy, and the establishment, aka the swamp. They've worked so hard to keep it all classified. This is their way to get it all back and destroy it. Trump declassified all the Crossfire Hurricane documents before he left. Isn't the burden of proof in the government that the documents weren't declassified? Another thought. Trump was still president when he landed in Florida before Biden was sworn in. If he had a standing order to declassify everything he took with him, then what was in those boxes would be declassified. Or that's what my traumatic brain sees as logic. Well, it's a pretty dang good brain there, 3 girlies, because it is quite logical and it makes a lot of sense. And if you want to play the hypothetical game, nuclear codes and top secret, ultra secure, ultra mega, whatever. It also could be Crossfire Hurricane. It could be all sorts of evidence that actually helped Trump. Sergeant Bob says, such a weak PC case, that agent should be ashamed. Facts Matter says, thank you. You're the best on the planet for breaking this stuff down. Have you by chance looked at Nate the lawyers on this? You and Barm seem to see on the same page. Nate's legal take about this is confusing to me. If you were a betting man, what do you think the DOJ will likely charge Trump with? Obstruction or... I think obstruction is probably a good one. Or obstruction, saying that he didn't give the stuff back when they wanted it back. Sergeant Bob, really, they should give up on the nuclear code nonsense. Any such codes are changed, and it's a bunch of rubbish. Heather says, if NARA or other permanent bureaucrat has the authority to determine if classifications were correct or not, doesn't that put them above the president, which doesn't jive with the Constitution? Yeah, a great point. DOJ and the FBI obviously did not read the U.S. code in its entirety, says Sergeant Bob. C. Reed is here, along with Zach Nichols, talking about a favorite song called White Lines from Zach. We had another comment come in from C. Reed. He said, where did our comments channel go to today? You're in it. You're in it right now, C. Reed. I put it up there in the notes. I said, this is your comment thread. Me thinks we still need a weekly meme channel so that we can have meme wars. I like meme wars. I do like the memes. The memes are pretty good. Here, let's see here. I'd like to solve the puzzle. Stop touching little, our president. Sergeant Bob says, some search warrants and searches are treasure hunts, and it certainly applies here with no particularity. That's the law enforcement sergeant in the House. Former LEO's here too. Thunder 7 says, what upsets me just as much as the lack of justice is the hubris of non-elected, paper-pushing appointed political hacks like the librarian and Garland and others who believe they have more authority or understanding about declassification. The president has absolutely authority on these matters, period. 3 Girlies says, so does the president's staff have access to Melania's closet? I don't know. Jeremy writes, Trump should have never handed over anything. As president, he could have declassified all of it. And as SCI, he's the only one that has that privilege to see the documents. I would then tell them to go suck on that. If they have a problem, then they can go read the Constitution. Good to see you, Jeremy. Robute says, I wonder if Trump chose his lawyers because of how hot they are. American Granny is here, says, Rob, your dedication to helping so many understand these important issues is amazing. Thank you. And yeah, thank you, American Granny. American Granny. Gosh, I'm glad that you're here. This is where you should be. Heather says, what came first, Trump's wonderful poll numbers or the Mar-a-Lago raid? I was under the impression that his poll numbers just started jumping after the raid. I think so too, right? I think so. There was no real reason for them to change until that all happened. Sergeant Bob says, deferred to DOJ, translation from Sleepy Joe. My buddy Merrick, can you do something to take care of Trump who's going to kick my butt in 2024? Sergeant Bob says, time for body cams has come for the feds. Jeff Rook says, what do you say to those critics who say, who says affirmative action makes minorities look worse? Is this a real quote? We've been very, I don't know if it's a real, we've been very, very consistent in our views. We view this policy as net positive. So I think you're just giving us word salad, Jeff. Yeah, it's, I think you said Kareem too, Kareem. I think it's word salad is the point you're making from Kareem. And yeah, she gives us a lot of that. Former LEO says, would the trial of Trump take place in the jurisdiction where the crime was committed? Well, that's a great question. So I would make so if I were a prosecutor, right, I'd make the argument that the crime, the nexus of the crime, well, you could make an argument either way, I think. You know, property shouldn't have been taken out of the White House or property shouldn't have been delivered. I think both jurisdictions. But if you're a prosecutor, you want to find the crime that originates in D.C. because you'll win that one easily. Oh, Hunter Biden redacted documents are here. Yeah, this one came in from Robute. We have Justin Obsessed who says, how many of the previous presidents that took the documents did NARA target to see which docs they had, right? Did they go after Obama? Did they go after... is her name Kareem? I thought it was Karine. Why does everybody keep saying Kareem? Is it Kareem Jean? Is it Kareem Jean Pierre? I thought it was Karine. Yeah, it's Karine. But two of you have said Kareem. Karine Jean Pierre. There were two separate comments that said Kareem on them. And I was, what? Am I? Okay. That came in from Words Mean Things. Trying to claim plausible deniability. Trouble is, it just isn't plausible. The American people aren't that naive. Of course it's not. It's a good comment, Words Mean. Of course, it's like the DOJ works. It's the cabinet. The attorney general's in the cabinet for the president. Here's another one from Jeff. He says, on a serious note, I see a solid argument for there being necessary processes for declassification. He can declassify whatever he wants. Doesn't sway much because of the chain of custody you talked about. There may not be limits, but not overly cumbersome processes should be in place. Yeah, but then that person has power over the president. I'm mostly mad because I don't trust a single thing coming out of these people's mouths anymore. When it comes to government misconduct, the burden of proof is on the accuser to prove the guilt. For everyone else, the burden is on the accused to prove innocence. Thankfully, our legal system isn't quite as broken as our political one, but I still say thank you to you and others for ensuring that it stays that way or improves. Good to see you, Jeff. Kenny says, I work with these types of materials all day, every day. The FBI agent writing the affidavit is full of it. POTUS determines what is authorized and what is authorized for storage. Biden or someone he delegated authority to must have said Mar-a-Lago is no longer authorized for storage. Vientikis says power transparency in a healthy society versus power transparency in an oppressive society. Nice one there, V. Let's do a refresh over here before we wrap it up for the day, just to see if we had anything else that came in. We do. We have a couple more. Here's Radice. Says, as an old nurse, I think 20 jabs will help TDS. It's not medical advice. Talk to your doctor. We have another one from PWSMKAZ says, at any given moment, there is an orthodoxy, a body of ideas, which it is assumed that all right-thinking people will accept without question. George Orwell, Animal Farm. Yeah, and Jason on Blast says, wow, that was a daring refresh. I think he was talking about my refresh. Yeah, because I refreshed it on screen. Yeah, sometimes you never know. Jeremy's here. He says, interesting Jeremy's here. He says, interesting fact. Mar-a-Lago translates to sea to lake. His property is sandwiched between the sea and a lake. Mar-a-Lago. It's got to be gorgeous. Maybe one day I'll go check it out over there. I don't know. Zach Nichols says, we could be here all night. Just keep submitting memes over on Locals. Good to see you, Jeremy. All right, we are going to wrap it up right there. Kenny, here's another one from Kenny. Kenny says, most classified materials are auto-declassified after a specific period of time. And that, my friends, is not it for the day. We had a super chat come in over on YouTube from Steven. Steven Kisnick says, is this really the standard for former presidents that Biden wants to hand over to Trump in his second term? They're giving him a blank check on raids. It is true. It is true, right? And we've said this, the pendulum swings the other way, right? AOC and, the squad and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden, they're all having a lot of fun. They're all having a lot of glee out there. Oh yeah, this is great. We just keep getting what we want. Constitution, who cares? But guess what? If you take those rules out of the game, like if you say it's okay to kick the other guys in the nads, when it's their turn to kick, they're kicking you in the nads. And it's probably going to be a stronger kick because they've been working hard at it. They're like, oh, guess what? The next time we're in charge, guess what we can do? They changed the games. Kicks to the nads are now fair game. And so you've got Matt Gaetz back out there and Marjorie Taylor Greene. They've got soccer balls, that they're just kicking every night. They're out there right now practicing. Matt Gaetz is holding the footballs and Marjorie's kicking them just day after day after day, because when they're in charge, it's going to be some serious front kicks to the nads, and it's not going to be good. All right. Well, it's going to be fun. It's not going to be good for the Democrats. But again, given the current disposition of genitals in America, I don't know that they're going to be too concerned about that. There may not be all that much there that is concerning. We'll have to see. Anyways, my friends, we are going to wrap it up there for the day. We have to say thank you to our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com and everybody who was a part of the show with all of those amazing questions. Shout out to our friends, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Jason on Blast, Susanna, we've got Zach Nichols, Savvy Sue with the vomit mouth over there. It's appropriate. Vianticus says, Nadler's Nads? Well, you don't want to get too close to him. He might kind of explode out of the diaper. Jeff says, my fault, guys. I thought it was Kareem. Oh, all right. And so thank you to our Locals friends. Shout out to our YouTube members over there. You also guys get over the Binger GIF over there. The Locals YouTube allows us to do that. And so you got the YouTube Full Metal Jacket Binger GIF. Shout outs to Jenny B, Holy F, My S Stinks, Curtis Bartles in the house. C. Reed is over there as well. And don't forget, I am a lawyer at the R&R Law Group, where we help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but beyond that, in their lives. We offer free case evaluations. Any type of crime in Arizona, we have a whole team of people that help. And I'm very passionate about the work that we do. Very, very proud of our team. 480-787-0394, free case evaluations. We're grateful for your referrals. They keep us busy. We have a lot of fun here on YouTube, but of course, there's some hard work that needs to be done out there with boots on the ground, in and out of the courts, and that's what we do. Shout out to our mods who modded down the fort for us today. Vianticus in the house. K-Bean, Just Cows, Lean was here playing hooky. Ronnie Cole. I know Zulu's out there. Shout out to Geomancy Games, and very grateful for all of you for modding down the fort, especially when we get some big numbers like that today. And I know sometimes it can be a lot, but I'm grateful for you. And finally, thank you to our Spotlight supporters, Chris Romero, Dr. EMB in the house, along with David B3, who all joined up at the Spotlight level on YouTube and or an equivalent level over on Locals. Thank you for that extra oomph and that financial support for the show. I do appreciate it. But that, my friends, is it for us for the day. We have covered a lot of ground this week, and we're going to be back next week to do it all again. We'll have our morning walk and talk tomorrow morning, and I hope you join us if you're a member or on Locals. Be on the lookout for that. But we are done for the week here, and it is time for us to unplug from politics, go outside, get some vitamin D, spend some time with friends and family, recharge those energy batteries, because, my friends, we're going to be back here next week to do it all again, and we've got to be rocking and ready to go. And I look forward to seeing you there. Have a tremendous weekend, everybody, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.